what I'll try and do is to take you through this whole story. Before I do that, I'll touch upon what Shrutapa just said about the health insurance scheme that she spoke about. Whatever I have attempted to do in code here is on the basis of the learnings that I got in my previous assignments. And one major learning that I got was when I was doing this scheme called Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana. It is, in short, perhaps the only paperless health insurance scheme in the world, and arguably the biggest health insurance scheme. But we don't know much about it because it was not sexy enough to be published on third pages or fourth pages. It never got noticed in India. But as it happens in India, when yoga becomes yoga, it gets to be recognized in the country of its origin. So RSBY got recognition world over. It was slotted by World Bank as one of the finest social security schemes in the world. So I used to travel a lot to Washington to discuss with them on one such occasion with the Obama team as to what this health insurance scheme could offer to the health insurance schemes in the US that were in trouble. Of course, we didn't have much to offer. But I must narrate to you a very interesting incident. In one of the presentations at the Brookings, there was a gentleman from Gates Foundation. After the presentation like this, we was having an informal chat over a cup of tea. He said, Mr. Swarup, you are very passionate about the scheme. What are you getting? What is the additional benefit that you're getting? You are a bureaucrat. Normally bureaucrats are not so excitable or excited or passionate about what they're asked to do. Why do you so passionately get involved in the tasks that are assigned to you, and especially the scheme? I didn't have an immediate answer. I paused for a moment and then I asked him a counter question. Why does your organization give billions of dollars to the poor states, the poor countries? So his answer was, well, that's a job and it gives us a lot of satisfaction. I said, you've answered my question. I said, there are millions of poor people who are benefiting by these schemes somehow, anyhow. Their good wishes are flowing back to me. There couldn't be a better kick than that. And I then gave him an example. In one of the visits to a small hospital, which was empaneled under RSBY, I was talking to a patient there, and suddenly I heard a feeble voice from behind. I turned around, and I saw a very old lady beckoning me, calling me. Someone had told her that I was associated with this health insurance scheme for the poor. So I walked over to her, and very feeble voice, she was trying to address me. So I asked her, Mata ji, aap theek to hain? I hope you're okay. So her response was, Beta, main bahut takleef mein hu. I'm in real pain. But these people around have really helped me. I don't have anybody around. This because of this smart card, and that health insurance scheme based on the smart card, I haven't had to pay a single penny. So I'm being looked after, but I'm really old. Now my time has come. I'll go to the Almighty. So I tried to tell her, no. They are looking after you. You'll be all right. You'll go out. No, beta. Now my time has come. After 2-3 rounds of this, she said, "Nee, beta, मैं तो अब जाऊंगी ऊपर वाले के पास. I'll have to go there. But one thing I'll tell you, your scheme is great." Now, what could be a greater kick than that? And when that chap from Bill Gates Foundation heard that, he understood what I was telling him. Now, why I'm telling it here? Because I have personally felt that in bureaucracy, especially in the government, or for that matter, any job, until you are passionately involved in doing what you're doing, I don't think in government it will never happen. Elsewhere also it will not happen. In government, there are too many things telling you not to do. There is a CVC, there is CBI, there is CAG, there are courts, there are CIC. There are 5 Cs who tell you not to do it. Because you're likely to get caught somewhere. I'm lucky so far I haven't. I still have about 2.5 years. I'm praying to God I hope I'm spared. Because मेरी तो आदत खराब हो गई, कुछ चढ़ी हो गई, सीधी होती नहीं, काम करना ही है, कुछ ना कुछ कहीं ना कहीं गड़बड़ हो ही जाएगा. But anyway, I pray to God that everything is fine. But as it happens in India, this scheme, when it got recognized world over, it got noticed in India. So I was asked by the then National Advisory Council headed by the chairperson, and I was asked to make a presentation on the scheme. They said, we haven't heard about this scheme. 3 years, scheme is well recognized world over, they don't know it in India. But they called me for a presentation because they think there is something in the scheme. So I go there and make a presentation. At the end of the presentation, probably they discovered Mr. Anil Swarup. That here is an individual doing something. But I was doing something for the poor. It's not being recognized, so pluck him out. So I was plucked out of RSBY and asked to serve the richest of the rich because earlier I was serving the poorest of the poor. Now, as Shutapa mentioned, I was then made head of the project monitoring group to fast-track projects above 1,000 crores. That's another very interesting story. I was actually in Cambodia. I was traveling all over the world to impress upon some other poor countries as to what would they benefit out of this scheme, because World Bank wanted this scheme to go to other poor countries. I was in Cambodia, and I got a message there that the cabinet secretary wants to talk to you. So I was about to take a flight, so when I landed in Delhi, I rang him up. I told him, sir, you wanted to talk. Anil, can you come down for a word in the morning? So when the cabinet secretary is the top bureaucrat in the country tells you, come next morning, you're not very sure what it's all about. So I asked him, sir, will you tell me? I'll come prepared. No, I just want to have a word chat with you. He still didn't tell me. So obviously I spent a sleepless night, wondering what I have been called. So when I went the next morning, and as is my habit, I landed at that place ahead of the scheduled time, and so did cabinet secretary. He saw me sitting in that guest room and he called me. So we went in there. Sorry?
That also starts with C, cabinet secretary.
No, I think he's been very helpful. Yeah. That's why I didn't mention. All C's are not so bad. C also stands for Q. So, and you should not generalize. I was just picking up just 5 of them. So he called me inside and he said, you have been drafted for a special assignment. So I politely told him, sir, my tenure has come to an end. I have put in more than the tenure that is required, and under the rules I cannot stay here. I have spoken to the state government, I have to go back. No, we have already taken a decision to grant you 1 year extension. Now when the government wants, it can do anything. So they did, but my heart was sinking. You know why? Because about 1.5 years before that, I had been drafted for a special assignment to head the anti-Naxal wing in the country. My minister ensured that I didn't leave RSPY. I continued to do that. But on this occasion, I thought maybe I am being drafted to be sent to Kashmir or somewhere, or Afghanistan. But he told me, no, you have been asked to head a group called Project Monitoring Group. I said, what is this Project Monitoring Group? The investment is not happening in the country. Many clearances are all stuck up. So something needs to be done. And yesterday, when the Prime Minister, Finance Minister, and I were discussing, we picked your name for that position. So I said, since you've already taken a decision, I'll do what you asked. But then I put a condition. I told him that given the environment in which everything was happening in the country, I said, I will keep it absolutely transparent. Now, in Cabinet Secretariat, by and large, everything is confidential or secret. Now I was telling you something else. I told him, sir, I will. He said, how? I said, I will put everything on the portal. And that's what she didn't find any file, because that is the only office in the country, government office, where there are no files. Still there are files. Everything happens on the portal. Now, I learned that technology can actually be used pretty well to make things transparent, if for nothing else, at least saving your skin. The logic is very simple. If I do anything wrong now, let me be caught now for my explanation, not somebody comes knocking on my door 5 years down the line asking, why did you do that? If I put everything on the portal, then someone will notice it and tell me that this is what is wrong. So it is basically to save my own skin. It is a different matter that as a consequence of that, many people benefited. Why did they benefit? People ask me, she said 5 lakh crores in a few months. Yes, indeed, it was about 6 lakh crores worth of projects that were cleared during that tenure of year and 2-3 months. People ask me, if you were to explain, how did it happen? I said, philosophy is very simple. There are other things. But the philosophy is that no matter how inefficient I am, to the public I'd like to appear to be efficient. No? All of us, powder लगा के निकलते हैं, शक्ल चाहे जैसी हो, है ना? बहुत खराब हो तो दाढ़ी, सॉरी, नहीं, कुछ भी कर सकते हैं, कुछ लगा लेते हो, ऊपर नीचे दाढ़ी. So the point I was trying to emphasize is, you put it on the portal and believe me, one minister lost a job because of that portal. Because the lady was sitting on files worth 54,000 crores. And that came to be known on the portal that every meeting that we had every week, file pending decision at an appropriate level. We didn't write at which level. But it got to be known gradually. And person had to go. But in majority of places started working. Now, why am I telling this all this background in the context of coal? Because we were trying to do something and then the new government thought that, okay, projects can be fast-tracked, but there is a crisis at hand in coal. So I was plucked out of that assignment and asked to join the coal ministry. And the initial few days that I spent there, when someone asked me, "Kya haal hai, kaisa lag raha hai?" I said, "Sir, naate koile pade." The original phrase is सिर मुड़ाते कोयले पड़े, but हमारे सिर मुड़ाते कोयले पड़े. It was baptized by fire, if not literally, almost literally. Coal fire burning all over the place. Scams in the background, Supreme Court having cancelled all the blocks, coal production plummeting, no one allowing you to sleep, the Chief Secretary is ringing you up, boss, coal khatam ho gaya, coal ka intezam karao. Serious problem. I had never had it this way in my entire life. Forget career. But it was amazingly difficult, it was amazingly interesting, and it was amazingly exciting. It might sound like an oxymoron, but that is how it was. And that kept you going. That's the excitement of life. If you can feel excited in the 50s, nothing like it. It keeps you going. So that was the excitement. But fortunately, I was blessed with a great team. Amazing team. You know, team is such that they do all the walking, I do all the talking. That's what I'm doing right now. So if you are blessed with such a team, then anything can happen. Then what exactly happened? That's the whole story. And what are we planning for the future? That's what I'm going to unveil now. I mean, all of you know, but maybe I'll tell you a few secrets as well as we go along. So when we started it all, the initial job was to see that the situation that had emerged as a consequence of the cancellation of coal blocks by the Honorable Supreme Court is handled. So we had to come out with a legislation. You all know how difficult it has been to get any legislation through this parliament. But we got it through. Of course, I'm writing a book, there's a chapter on it. How did this legislation got through? Some of it I can reveal here. But we had to strategize in terms of getting this legislation going after the ordinance was cleared. So I remember when I met the Prime Minister, I joined on the 16th of October. On 17th, I met the Prime Minister. He didn't have much to say, but very effectively he told me, Anil ji, आप कोल के सेक्टर को ठीक कर दीजिए, देश की आर्थिक स्थिति सुधर जाएगी. And then he turned towards his Principal Secretary and told him, इनको जो सहयोग हो प्रदान कीजिए. That's it. And thereafter, I can tell you, I got all the support from all the quarters. I think the bottom line is, I didn't get a single call from anyone to help anyone. I have never had it this way in my entire career. It would have been really tough if I would have been under pressure to assist or help somebody. So we could do the way we wanted to do. All the support was coming. And then we got down to it. You all know how we identified blocks, what transparent mechanism was put in place, how the coal blocks were auctioned. You can always argue that it could have been better. But the point is, the time that was available to us, about 4 to 5 months, to do something which was unthinkable. We managed to identify those blocks. We managed to put in place a very transparent process where everyone could see what was happening. I gradually made myself totally redundant. That's the objective I have in every assignment. So at some point in time, there was a situation when auctions were happening, I had nothing to do. So I started tweeting. Why did I tweet? Because I was getting phone calls, what is the status, what is happening? So my son, I am not so tech savvy, though I know how to use technology, I can barely operate my computer. So my son told me, why don't you communicate through this Twitter? The world will know what is happening. So I went on the Twitter and then started tweeting. I didn't really know the implications. It was only later that I realized that people started noticing what I was sending on Twitter, and it saved me a lot of trouble. Because no one rang me up at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, individually I had to inform them. This was one way of using technology platform to convey to others. So what really happened was that on account of transparency, on account of our intensive interaction with all the stakeholders, that was very critical in coal. So what we did in coal was, from the underground mine, we made it into an open cast mine. So that visibility is there for everyone got to see it. Whatever was happening was known to everyone. Now we confessed to begin with that we didn't know everything. So once you confess your ignorance, it helps you to learn, no? And I obviously was just a novice in this sector, in every sense of the term. Because there were sharks all around, there were friends all around, very difficult to discern who's the shark, who's the friend, very difficult to know what to come, what not to come. I still don't know a lot of it, still discovering it every day. But at that point in time, it was pretty tough because it had to be done at a particular pace. And we had to finish that at that point in time. we were quite aware of the fact that everyone is looking at you with a telescope trying to find faults. I still don't know about those 5 C's could still find some faults. They would, otherwise they will lose their job. They have to find something. If everything is fine, first the bureaucracy will wither away, then others will wither away, then the state will wither away. So there you have to create problems if you don't have them to justify your existence. So there could still be trouble for me at some point in time, but so far so good, thank God. So that is how it happened. But even as we were thinking in terms of, reconstructing the demolished systems in terms of allocation of natural resources, which came in for tremendous amount of criticism from the courts, even as we did that, we were looking at a different objective. The objective was, and I still believe, that the problem in coal sector is basically on account of paucity, shortage of coal. Whether it's coal mafia, whether it is block allocation, if the shortage goes, then no one will be running around for will be doing any hanky-panky to get anything. So what do you do in terms of increasing coal production? That was the underpinning objective of whatever we were doing. So what did we do in that context? I'll give you what actually happened and then tell you how it happened. Some of you might be aware, but let me share it. The coal production by Coal India was growing at the rate anywhere between 1 and 3% before 2014. So from 2010 to 2014, there was a cumulative growth of around 31 million tons. In the year 14-15, as against the cumulative growth of 31 million tons in the previous 4 years, the growth in 1 year was 32 million tons. That was 14-15. I'll tell you what happened, then I'll tell you what were the implications, and I'll tell you then how it happened. Well, that's the full story. Actually, people know me more about coal auction, but I think the real coal story is coal production, not coal block auction. Now in the year 2015-16, should I use that phrase, all hell seems to have broken loose because the production is growing at 9.8%. It is incredible. In fact, the incremental production is more than the entire incremental production of the last year. We've already crossed that 32 million tons growth over the previous year, when it had grown 32 million tons in the entire year. And we are almost there, 400 million tons this year itself. And we are likely to hit anywhere between 540 to 550 million tons, which will again be a record production. Now, what has happened as a consequence of this production? Consequent to this production, look at the situation in the power plants. Till about a year or maybe 15 months ago, power plants had an inventory of anywhere between 3 and 7 days, and some in serious trouble. But today, on an average, power plants have an inventory of 24 days. Now, this is not on account of reduction in demand. I was very sorry to read in a newspaper today that a reporter reported that there is surplus coal because the demand has come down. That is factually incorrect. With a journalist friend, I have an arrangement. Your views are yours, but the facts are facts. You can't write a wrong fact. The demand for coal has actually gone up, and this is evidenced by the increase in the electricity generation this year. It may not have increased at the levels that you and I would have wanted, but the point is electricity generation is more than last year, much more than last year. So there was demand. But what has actually happened was, consequent to this increase of production, two things happened. Supply of coal increased and the coal imports have started coming down. They have already come down by 15% over the previous year. But we can't rest on our laurels, because it is criminal that we sit on more than 300 billion tons of coal and yet we import coal. Now, some environmentalists, there's a huge debate, COP21, everyone talks about reducing coal. Yes, I totally agree. And I'll come to this topic after I complete the coal story. I'll come to this topic of environment and coal. I'll come to that. But let me complete this story. So, the coal production increased. Now, the next question is, what had not happened in almost a decade before that, how did it happen in the past year and a half? What actually took to take the production to the levels it has? And let me explain this to you. Coal production is a factor of three major aspects. Number one, land acquisition. Number two, environment clearance. And number three, evacuation. There are other factors, but these are the three primary factors. In the last 1 year or 15 months, record amount of land has been acquired, despite all this talk about Land Acquisition Act and Bill. Coal India did more than 2,500 hectares of land. More than 40 environment clearances have been granted. Now, this is not by bypassing any system. I leveraged my knowledge in the project monitoring group. We set up a similar portal in Coal India, in Coal Ministry, and we worked towards it. I'll explain how did that happen. And the third thing, I think railways have come up trumps, because look at what has happened. During 14-15, the average rake availability was 182 rakes per day. During 15-16, the average rake availability is about 204. And in the month of December, it had gone up to 225 rakes per day. Without those rakes, I may have produced more, but my evacuation would have suffered. And that is why, though our production increase is by 9.8%, the evacuation is more than 10.2%. So railways have come handy. Now the next question is, how did this happen? Why did land acquisition, or how did land acquisition happen? How did environment clearance happen? How did railway come on board? Because that's where is the essence of making things happen in a country like ours. The first thing that we did was to clearly define the roles of Coal India and the ministry. I am not a great believer in monitoring, because it smacks of superciliousness. It smacks of a fact that I am wiser than the other chap. So we entered into a dialogue with Coal India. I said, you do your job, I do my job. And now what are those jobs? I told them it would be easy for the ministry to interface with the state governments, with the central ministries, and assist the Coal India in getting such clearances which Coal India cannot get it itself. And I asked Coal India to focus on digging, getting the coal out. And it worked. It worked brilliantly. What did we do? Typically, secretaries to Government of India don't travel out of Delhi. My lesson was again project monitoring group, where I used to travel twice a week to a state headquarters. Of course, I don't travel so much here. I traveled once a week to a state, sit with the chief secretary through the day, along with all the senior officers, including collectors and district magistrates, doing two things. One, of course, conveying a value proposition to them, that whatever I am asking you to do will ultimately benefit the state. It's obvious, it's common sense, but unfortunately common is the most uncommon sense. But you have to convey it, you have to package it. And secondly, by repeatedly going to the states, they feel a bit embarrassed if they don't do the job. I don't have to embarrass them actually. But if the Secretary to Government of India keeps traveling to a state, keep requesting them what has happened to this, what has happened. I must give you a couple of incidents. West Bengal and central government have their own had their own relationships. But even in those hotter times, we managed to get land for 6 coal blocks. And how did we do that? I knew the chief secretary personally. I mean, I am great at using my personal collection for official work and not the other way around. So I knew him personally, went to his place with a half typewritten page in which it was mentioned, by not giving us this blocks, you are losing this much money per day. You've already lost so much, and in future you're going to lose this much per day. And by keeping that land with you, which in any case will continue to be yours, you're not gaining anything. So the land continues to be yours, I'm just leasing it out. It will come back to you. Please give me that land so that you can start making money. Within 24 hours, he got the signatures of the powers that be, and we got those blocks. I can go on and on, keep narrating this incident. But the key was whether we sit in Delhi and pontificate that states are not doing this, states are not doing that, or to go down to state. I think that was the game changer. Now, this could not have been done by Coal India. But it was eminently possible for secretary to go down to the state, sit with them and find solution. This is, as I said, was a lesson that I got when working as the head of the project monitoring. That's one. The second, as I mentioned to you earlier, we set up the coal project monitoring portal. Those are familiar with the web portal created for the PMG will understand the strength of that portal. We created a similar portal here. We meet with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Railways on a fixed day and time every month. They know it, I know it. And the details are there on the portal. The result has been fabulous. We've got those environment clearances. We put every issue on focus. We've got these rakes coming from railways. Consequent to which we have this coal production going. My hope is, and I'm quite confident, that this production will continue with the same pace. And with the private sector production kicking in with these coal blocks, 8 of the coal blocks have started producing coal. Some of them will again come in, and by 31st March we feel another 15 blocks will start producing coal. Some people have asked me, why is there delay in producing coal from these coal blocks? Now, I only counter question and said, it's not easy to transfer property from one hand to the other. When you talk of coal blocks, it's even worse. Some of us have not actually seen a coal block, how it works. So sitting here in Delhi, ये कुर्सी उठा के यहाँ कर दे, ऐसा क्यों नहीं हो रहा? It's not as easy. People who know how coal blocks operate will appreciate the fact that mining is not an easy operation. The previous owner has to take his infrastructure, logistics out, the other one has to come in, settle arrangements and start moving. Obviously it would take time, but I'm quite sure it will happen. Now what is our vision for the future? We are looking at, and I've said that in a number of places, that we're looking at 1.5 billion tons of coal by 2020. 500 million tons from the private sector, 1 billion tons from Coal India and Singareni coal fields. My hope is, and I'm quite confident, the way we are going, we should be able to produce that much coal. The private sector, where it come from, we have about 204 blocks that were cancelled by the Supreme Court. They have a potential of producing about 8 to 900 million tons. So if I'm seeking about 500 million tons from them, 4 to 5 years down the line, I'm not asking for the moon. And if there is a demand, then they should be able to produce that. Now, before I conclude, let me briefly touch upon this aspect of environment friendliness. I would like to place and report very clearly that for us also, environment is totally non-negotiable. We are conscious of the fact that environment has to be protected. But the question that we must also answer is, if we do not have an alternative source, we have to continue to bank on coal. Till such time, we get an alternate source. We must all appreciate that the per capita consumption of energy in this country is at the level of late 19th and early 20th century in the US. Now, if country has to grow, we require energy. I'm quite comfortable if we have alternative source. Government has clearly demonstrated that they are looking at alternative source. The target is 175,000 megawatt, out of which 100,000 megawatt will come from solar energy. And the way the country is going towards solar energy, we are moving in that direction. But be that as it may, our base power will continue to come from coal. So until unless you have an alternative available, the next option is how to use coal in a manner that it reduces the impact on environment. What are the methods? And we're working towards it. Having increased coal production, the focus is now on number one, crushing of coal. I had promised that from 1st of January this year, only crushed coal will move out of collieries. Those of you that are in coal sector, please give me feedback if this is not happening. My feedback is it is happening on the ground. Crushed coal is moving, less than 100 mm. That is the coal that is moving out of collieries. Number two, we are committed to setting up coal washeries, and they will all become operational. All coal above G11 shall be crushed and transported from 1st October 2017. And we are well on target to set up those washeries. There are certain issues. Obviously, when you do a new thing, when you push a thing which was not happening in the past, obviously there are issues, but we are trying to address this. So our attempt is to see that we minimize the damage. We are ensuring through satellite mapping that wherever there is mining that is happening, for every hectare of mine that is mined, we will have 2.4 hectare of forestation. We are very closely monitoring through GPS mapping. Now, don't ask me to throw the baby along with the bathwater. The point is very simple. We have to bank on coal. We just cannot say, just because it is polluting the environment, please give up coal. Then what will you do? People will cut wood and burn. Will that be environment friendly? What would be more environment friendly? Until you have that answer, I think we'll have to live with coal. It's not that I'm very happy saying that, but it's a compulsion of existence. So that is how it will be. So that, in brief, is the coal story. A difficult story, an interesting story. I enjoyed traveling that distance. I hope I continue to enjoy it. But all I can say is, right now I've become virtually redundant to the ministry. Everything happens on its own. I've become totally powerless, so no one visits me. I can't give anybody any favor. Thank you very much for inviting me.